All right. Awesome. Thanks. So yes, my name is Cathy Moya and I do work at Microsoft. I'm on the Microsoft Mesh team. I am one of those people who found VR at the start of the pandemic and I made friendships. I became part of the community and I just never looked back. So even before Mesh was something that I knew about, I wanted to bring people into these immersive experiences because I believe that we can get really good human connection out of this all of this virtualness. So and actually my job right now at Microsoft on the Mesh team, I'm a senior customer experience program manager, but specifically I work on our technical adoption program and our early adopters. So my job is to bring people into Mesh and get people excited about it and using it, and then take that feedback back to our product team. So what I'm going to talk about today is, first of all, kind of what do we mean by these immersive experiences and why should you even care, and why should the people that you want to throw events for care? Because I have found that that's a bit of a struggle to kind of bring all of that together. And then I'll talk about some of the tips that I have learned in the dozens and dozens and dozens of events that I've run that you want to think about beforehand going in, and then also some tips and tricks that I've learned while you're actually running the event. And then we'll have some time at the end for Q&A, although I'm also pretty easy. If you have questions, throw your hand up, and I'd say probably use the raise hand because I'm not going to be watching the chat too closely. So first of all, why use immersive experiences? And I think you have to start by, what do we mean by even what is an immersive experience? So the thing that I am talking about here is the experience where you could be wearing a headset like this, got my trusty Quest 2. And when I turn my head to look in this, of course, the goggles are always following me. So everything feels like it's completely surrounding me 360 degrees. And then as I'm moving in the environment, if I shake my head or nod my head or, tilt my head, my avatar is actually going to mimic all of those actions, and also hand movements, because I have controllers in here and I can actually use these to do things like point and reach and grab, and other people in VR platforms can see that. So when I am in my headset, I am just in my headset. I have notifications turned off in there. I'm not seeing email. I'm not trying to talk on the phone. I am completely surrounded by the visual and also by the audio, because there are speakers in there right next to my ears, and I am just feeling like I am in the space. But that was actually not my first experience in VR. I went in 2D in an app on a PC screen. So kind of like a video game where I may turn my physical head, I just see my craft room that I'm presenting from. But if I'm turning my avatar's head in the game, then my point of view is going to change. Or in the platform, not necessarily games, but it's like a game. And I don't have things that are going to mimic my natural hand movements, but there may be some hand movements that are built in, like I may be able to pick something up even on a PC, and you'll see my avatar's hand grab something. And I can also move the avatar's head, because we need to be able to look around. So every VR platform I've seen, you're able to move the head somewhat. You can, shake your head, you can nod your head, and also be changing some of that perspective there, even on the PC app. It does let you multitask, so it is not as immersive, but that can also be a benefit, as we'll talk about if you're running events. And I'm not necessarily getting the full surround sound. It's really just as good as my speaker setup. So if I have headphones on, I'm probably getting a pretty decent surround sound. Even just with my PC speakers, I'm still going to get, some of that stereophonic effect being in my room there. So I do use 3D sometimes. I still actually do a lot of stuff that I'm doing on just plain 2D for some of the reasons that I'll talk about later. But I find it all really immersive. And really, for me, the key element of these immersive experiences is this spatial audio. So what do we mean by that? If you're in standard audio, like we are right now, everybody is hearing everything exactly equally, and only one person can talk at any given time. If you try it, someone else tries to talk, they're both projected equally, or one will cut the other out depending on the platform that you're on. So when you're trying to do something like the happy hours that we tried to do after COVID started, and you would have, 15, 20 people in a virtual room, but only one person could talk at a time. And I found that like 2 or 3 people would monopolize the conversation. And I don't know about the other people, but I was sitting there saying, I would really like to leave, but it would be awkward if I did. So I would just kind of like sit there and maybe multitask. But with spatial audio, what's happening is you're coming into this virtual space, and the people who are next to each other talking are going to hear each other better. And someone who is right between those two groups is going to be able to hear a little bit of each one. And somebody who is way out on the periphery may not be able to hear anything distinct at all. It may just be kind of a murmur that's going on in the background, or maybe nothing, depending on how the audio has been tuned within that space. And for me, that is the $100,000 ticket of spatial audio. Why I need it so much, because you can have those little group conversations. You can have, free range roaming around, listening to what other people are talking about, and that agency within the room there. So, with the video, you don't have a choice. Like every little box in the gallery is just going to show up where that box shows up, unless you maybe pin it or focus on it, highlighting. If you go into the together mode, which is awesome, you're still only going to see that, just wherever your avatar ends up is kind of where you're stuck. But with the avatar experience, if you don't like where you are, you can just pick up and move your avatar somewhere else in the room. I'm going to go get some virtual coffee. I'll see you later, and walk off. Or, oh, I see my friend over there, and get that kind of open conversation feeling. So that is what I really try to stress when I bring people into these immersive experiences for the first time. Because if you're really just going to go for, the flat 2D sound, yeah, you may as well just stay in Teams for that. But if you can build experiences that take advantage of this, then people are going to be able to see the value of it. And then the other piece that you can get here that's not quite the same as in Teams is these amazing environments. So this one on the right here, and all of these, by the way, these are screenshots that are taken from the video that we released at Microsoft Build. I forgot to grab a link for that, but I can find it and put it in the chat later. And at Build, we had one presentation on building immersive experiences. That's actually going on right now. If you want to head over to Classroom 3, Mega and Brent, you can see their avatars here, are presenting that. And then this is the environment that we hang out in on Friday afternoons on my team. We go to the beach. It's lovely. This was built by somebody on my team. Takeda has been doing some really amazing events as one of our early adopters here. DXC has been doing some training. PwC has been doing all sorts of things. We did the World Economic Forum a couple of times, and this is from the last year, of being able to recreate an undersea environment and show things like how the types of nets and cage fishing are really just impacting the environment down there. And then we also had the Accenture. You may have seen videos of this. We've been talking about this for a couple of years actually, but they started in AltSpace, and now they are they've moved everything into our mesh environments here. So whatever you can envision, you can have your event in these environments if you have someone with Unity skills to build this. And many of the other platforms out there also offer really amazing experiences. So specifically what Microsoft Mesh is going to offer, what we have said publicly, is that we have avatars for teams. So I could right now switch my presentation and not show you my video, but show you my little avatar cartoon Cathy here instead. So that is available in any, with general Teams licensing. You can see what's required for that in the documentation. And we really encourage people to use that because it's going to form kind of a gateway into the rest of these experiences, as we'll see later. Immersive space for teams. This is a picture that I screen cut out of the video. So all you'll need to do to get into immersive space for teams is go up to the view menu, and instead of picking something like together mode or extended gallery, you'll be able to say immersive space. And with 2 clicks, you are going into that environment. Now, 2 clicks if you already have your avatar configured. And that's one of the reasons I'm really encouraging people, set up your avatar now, get your people to set up their avatar, start having meetings where you do avatars, because then when you get that immersive spaces, you won't have to have people stop and do all the avatar configuration before they can join your meeting. There are a couple of legal screens, and then you got to actually say, yeah, join the meeting. But really, it's like 2 clicks and you're in. There's nothing else to install. It's awesome. And then we also have the Mesh app. So both of these are in private preview right now. They will be coming to public preview, but I don't have any information to share about when and what that'll be like. But definitely go take a look at the blog and the video that we did for Build back in May, and that'll give you a lot of all of the information that we're saying publicly right now about what the experiences are. So I also have to caution that immersion isn't always the best route to take. It is fantastic for some things, like when you want to have people really paying attention. Now, honestly, right now, I don't see, and kind of the people I've talked with in general are not necessarily seeing a huge stampede to go out and buy a lot of these devices. We're really thinking that a lot of this is still going to be starting off in the 2D kind of mode here, which would have the multitasking. But if you have the budget to buy these things, if you have the buy-in from your leadership to do it, and you can make them see, yeah, when people are there, it's like they're in the room. If they're checking their email, it's really obvious. You got to like take off the headset, and you leave your avatar usually kind of hanging there in space. So really total focus. And then the socialization before and after presentations. For me, that's the key. If all you're going to do is open brain, insert content, one person talk, everybody listen, keep it in teams, keep it in Teams Live. That's fantastic for that. But it's the socialization. I went to a fantastic event for SharePoint in AltSpace. They had all of the best speakers. They had Jeff Teeper, they had everybody. But they didn't give us time to talk to each other until the very end. They brought out snowballs, and that was my favorite part of that conference, because then I could talk to all of these other SharePoint people, and you could see people recognizing people across the room there, but we were force muted so that the presentations could go on. So if you're going to do something like that, build in intermissions, build in 5 or 10 minutes. And just like if you were doing that in real life, you'll find that people will not want to come back from that 5 or 10 minute break. They'll just be, often talking to each other and getting that human connection. But it's also, if you're going to sit together and watch a presentation, watch something live, watch something pre-recorded, it is also about coming together in the experience. I believe that is why people go to conferences like Ignite and Build. It's not just to see the person on the stage. There's something about coming together to watch this. I don't know if you saw the keynote that we did at the first All Digital Ignite in 2020 in November. But we were doing some presentation, showing video into AltSpace, and I was there in my avatar form, hanging out with my buddies, watching this, and I felt really present. I felt really connected to the other people. I could see their emojis, their reactions, and even when I went back and watched the recording, to me that felt much more engaging than the sequence that came next of somebody walking through his kitchen talking about our products. So that kind of stage-like experience with the community coming together is fantastic in immersive platforms. If you're going to do a happy hour, that sucks in Teams, but it is great in VR. And especially if you kind of design the experience so that people know how to get in, enjoy it, and have the kind of conversations that they might have in person. It's also great if you want to do something like an expo or a booth experience, job fair type things, science fair, because you can actually set up the individual booths and people have the agency. They can get up, they can walk around. And, I've seen this experience also done in some other, kind of flat platforms, just with little video conferences that you pop into. But the beauty of the immersive experience is that I can also look around and see who else is in the room. And I've literally been to events where it's like, oh, great, there's Laurel. I haven't seen her in ages, and I'll go over and just start talking to her. So you get that kind of 360 experience, even in these social elements. Guided tours also tend to work really well. The experience that I showed you the picture of from Accenture, they've been doing their new joiner experience is kind of like a museum-ish almost kind of thing. So you can build experiences like that, either where people go through alone, or my preference is get people together, make them get into groups of 3, 4, 5 and walk through the guided tour so that they can talk about it, so they can share their experience. Because for me, it's really about the connection. But if it's really about the content, if you just need everybody looking at the same content, stay in Teams Live. They're awesome. They're going to get you there. Everybody knows them. They work well, and everybody's on the same page. And that common experience, everyone's looking at the same thing from that same angle. If you're doing a guided tour, some people may be looking at it from this way, some are looking at it from this way, up, down, levels of things. But, Teams and Teams Live, everyone is there. It is scalable. It is easily moderated. And not to say that there aren't moderated experiences in the immersive, but you've got like Q&A, you've got your little text thing there, and people can be anonymous if they're asking things. It's a really well-oiled machine. And so that still may be the best platform for you. Some immersive experiences provide chat, some don't. It kind of, depends on what you're doing with it. But of course, like right now, we could be having a whole chat here. I'm not watching it, but, raise your hand if you want to stop me on something. And then being able to see faces. So I'm not doing this in avatar, I'm giving you my real face with all my reactions and things. Especially, we found a lot of leadership people are not willing to present in avatar. And so different platforms are looking at addressing this in different ways. But, if you really just want to have the person there, or, lots of people there with their faces, Teams and Teams Live are great for that. Accessibility is also an issue, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that when we talk about, kind of planning the experience. But, Teams and Teams Live have been around for a while. They have amped up their accessibility, and is still going to be a good way for a lot of people to experience the event on a level playing field. So thinking about planning these experiences, about inclusivity, which will include accessibility, thinking about, gosh, how are you going to get these people into these events? And then, how does it work with capacity and some of the limitations that we have? So I got in, I just thought this was like the best thing ever. I started trying to drag people in. And what I found is people would say, well, I don't have a VR headset. Well, I said that at first too. Or I don't care about VR, or I hear a lot of, oh, it's so cartoony, I don't care about that. And so it can be a little hard to drag people in sometime. Well, first of all, not having a VR headset, no problem, because like I said, you can just run this as an app or get there directly from Teams. You do not need to have a VR headset to experience this. But a lot of people don't realize that at first. They hear, virtual reality or immersion, and, they think it's got to be, buy everybody a Quest. The other thing that I found is it's really hard for people to understand what's so awesome about it until they do it and have a good experience. Like if somebody just goes in alone and wanders around, they're not going to get it. So a big piece of what I'm thinking about when I am planning is how do I get people in with an experience that's going to show off the spatial audio, show off that free range movement, the autonomy within the space here, and make them really love it. And what I found is that, I still get like maybe 5-10% of the people who get in there and say, meh, it was okay. And mostly 80% are like, oh, okay, I get it. This is really cool. And then I get like 5-10% who are like, oh my gosh, this is the best thing ever. I have to go do this for everybody. And that was my experience. And I love making other zealots out there for this. Now, the reason why it's cartoony is if you haven't heard of the phenomenon called uncanny valley, go look that up. That's your homework. But just really briefly, uncanny valley is the experience that is theorized where they think that when we see something that looks very real, but it's not completely real, it's just enough wrong that we can tell, our brains really reject that. And the most common example is department store mannequin. The more real they look, the more creeped out people usually are by that. And so they often try to abstract it. Or if you see films like Pixar and Disney films, they don't try to make the people look real, because if they did, like Polar Express, that one had a lot of people tripping on Uncanny Valley. But the other thing that we're finding about the avatar experience, about being able to really create your own non-photorealistic representation, a lot of people have various types of body dysmorphia, gender dysmorphia. Just they don't see themselves the way the rest of the world sees them. And by being able to build their own avatar to represent themselves, they can get a truer representation of how they feel they want to present. And so, we're really seeing that as a wonderful, kind of diversity and inclusion option for people. And also sometimes just not having your face all over everything can be a lot more relaxing at the end of a very long day of meetings. Motivation can be hard though, trying to get people in and saying, well, gosh, I've got to install another app, and oh, the onboarding. every single platform I have used, there are always onboarding issues, some more, some less. Um, so one of the ways that we help with the onboarding is not making you install another app, at least for the Teams experience. So like I showed you, you just say view immersive space, don't have to install anything else as long as the admin has, done their bit, it'll be there. Um, if you're talking about the app itself, it is deployable, so you can use your MDM platform like Intune Configuration Manager, make it show up on people's desktops. So at least there's a little bit less overhead in having to start it and go out and find it. But any platform you're going to do, make sure you have a good story about how you're going to get the app. And of course, the other thing along with the app is usually then there's some sort of authentication. Well, with what we're doing here, of course, we have AAD. Everything is just kind of all, very smooth in there. So the onboarding, I'm not saying it is 100% perfect, but it is greatly easier with some of the work that you're going to see in Mesh. And especially if you get them to do the avatars first, that's your call to action. Like, go get those avatars set up, because then they'll be able to just 2-click right into the immersive space. You get them used to that. And then after you kind of get them like, oh, okay, I kind of like this immersive space. Like, hey, now I've really got something for you. And you throw them that app and you throw them these amazing environments. We have, in addition to our cabana that we play in on Friday, we also have a representation of Studio C at Microsoft, our building and our lobby that my teammate Eric built for us. And sometimes people get kind of emotional because it's like that may be the closest they ever get to the actual campus these days. So some of the things that I've done that will help kind of make this easier in getting in. Content. You have to have something to bring them in. Just saying, oh, this is in VR, come see it, is not enough. I found that out the hard way. VR is not novel enough for people to overcome all of that inertia getting in there. But like that SharePoint conference, I saw lots of people in there, and I saw a lot of people in 2D, meaning that, they probably hadn't just stumbled across this after they bought a VR headset. Like, they were probably coming in specifically for that SharePoint conference because they had all the names. So make it worth their while. Even in my own group, we struggle with that sometimes, just getting people to come out to, like a Friday social thing because everyone's busy. But when we have our AMAs with our vice presidents, that's the content. That's what gets people to show up. So you also have to make sure that there's something to help them. This is a new experience. If it's an immersive space, it's not hard because you got your Teams chat right there. You're still all in the same Teams meeting. But if you are going to go with, another platform, any kind of standalone thing, make sure you have some sort of help desk experience in whatever invite you're setting out. So if you're in Zoom, have a chat running there so people make sure people know how to find it if they get stuck, when they get stuck, because I still find, there are a lot more people that get stuck than I usually think they're going to be. If you can, use that progression, go to the avatars, and then from the avatars, just be running a Teams meeting, get people to go into immersive space from their Teams meeting, even if it's just a few minutes, get them comfortable walking and talking, so that by the time you want to do these big events, that they're all used to it. Have social gatherings, have little happy hours, give them some kind of a quest to do. There was one team I worked with, and they set up a little baby Yoda in the environment, and they told everyone, go and take a picture with baby Yoda. So they knew who had not been in, and they could track that, and they could plan for how they were going to help these people who hadn't been in. And your executives are always going to be the worst. They will not go in beforehand. So really, you have to give them as much one-on-one onboarding as you can prior, or work with their admins, work with their entourage, their people, and maybe get the people in there so the people can be helping their leadership. But just again, those small events can help. Maybe have suggested leadership that they run their own little event, like our VP and their directs get together in Mesh and do things so that they're all comfortable with it by the time it comes to, presenting out to other people there. But the other thing I really say is you need to think about the expectations here. We're doing some amazing things here, but it's bumpy. And you have to let people know it's going to be bumpy, and it's going to be okay that it's bumpy because it's going to get better. Link, Skype, Teams, if you remember those from the past, those were rough at first, and they got better. It's been a long time since we've had 20 minutes trying to set up a Teams call, but it was there, it happened for a long time. So set expectations and focus on, the good and the potential, and, just acknowledge and try to plan for working through the rough spots as much as possible. So one of the issues that you're going to have is every platform is going to have capacity issues there, because, this is still newish technology. There's a lot of rendering. There are so many polygons in these virtual environments getting crunched with the GPUs out there. So everybody is dealing with them differently in various ways. I think one really interesting way, I think, out of the ones I know about, and I'm not saying I know everything, is that these are springing up like mushrooms everywhere. But in Verbella, I've been to events where, if you're in a small event, you see all of the avatars rendered beautifully. But when it starts to reach a certain capacity, they go to this chalk outline. And to me, it's a little bit, kind of like, the murder victim out there. And you just kind of like start seeing all of these, kind of just, outlined humanoid shapes out there. But they do that because, that's how you can have, I don't know, 1,000 people. I forget what their capacity is, but you can have a lot of people in a single virtual space. What I think most places are doing is some kind of a mirrored capacity. And we did actually say in our blog that Mesh can host large events by mirroring the content and experience across a set of smaller rooms, so attendees can have a shared experience in one environment. So again, not telling anything that's not publicly available here. So you have a room, you have your presenters in some kind of room, you broadcast your presenters across that room and all of the other rooms. So, depending on the platform, you could have 100 rooms there and have X number of people in each room. And so that's a fantastic experience if you want people to be able to just kind of sit back and listen, and maybe just do a little bit of socializing with the people that end up in that same instance of the event that they are in. Where I find that can get a little bit tricky is if you want to do something that is not all about a presentation. How do you host larger events? And so generally what I do is just like I would do, when we do Ignite at a convention center, we are not all in one room, we're in one building. So you kind of make a virtual building, some way of linking those spaces together. Some platforms have teleporters, some have, dashboards or, ways of grouping events. And you link all of those spaces together, and then you let people wander through those spaces of the event and make sure they know what's available. So I've done events where I've had, like the basketball court, and then the disco and the conversation garden. And people could just kind of wander through those like you might at, any hotel ballroom kind of party where you have more than one space in that hotel. The other thing that you can do is various types of overflow spaces. So you've seen this at conferences. If the room with Satya is physically full, they won't let anyone else in. They will broadcast the same content off to other rooms here. So you'd have overflow 1 and overflow 2 that people can get to. And you can do the same kind of effect here. Either, you can use the mirroring that's built into a platform, and then people feel like they really are, in that experience live. You can't tell you're in an overflow if the mirroring is done well. But you can also just set up the namespaces, because one of the issues that I found with the mirrored rooms, like an alt space, you could go into the mirrored room, and then you would say to someone, okay, meet me by the popcorn machine. And then they would go to the popcorn machine, and they wouldn't see you because I was by the popcorn machine in room 2 and they were the popcorn machine at room 6. And there's no visual cue to let you know what room. Now, they did change that eventually. They added something that would say, as you went into a mirrored event, oh, you have friends in room 2 and 6 and 12. Where do you want to go? And you could, slot yourself in, but you still didn't really have the agency to switch between the rooms. Only event moderators had that. But, as an event moderator, I could say, oh, great, my friends are in room 6, I'm going to go see them, and had, some UI. So everyone can handle that mirroring experience a little bit differently. So in planning your event, just like we're doing in-person events, just like we're doing Teams events, if we're doing immersive experiences, we want them to be inclusive. So really just start by thinking about how you're going to welcome everybody who is coming to this event. And what I recommend there is starting with that low pressure social event. So don't make it where everybody has to install and try to get this new thing and show up for this big meeting with, the VP or the president of the company here. Do that slow progression. Start with the avatars, immersive space, then, kind of build up to those big agenda things. Now, if you do want to have some kind of agenda, because remember, content does bring people in, skew the content start time, make it later so that you allow time for people to come in. You allow time for people to, oh, I didn't install the app yet, or oh, I don't know how to move around. So very often, even with people who are experienced in VR, I'll start with some icebreakers in that first, 10, 15 minutes, and then actually start the agenda after that, and then still allow some more time at the end for socializing. Spawning is when people appear in that virtual space, and every platform can handle how that spawning happens, but you can usually determine where that point is going to be. And you want to make sure that you are doing things to help people orient as soon as they come in. So very often I will create posters in VR and I'll put them right there at the spawn point. So people come in and they see, oh, here's how to move, or here's the troubleshooting, or here's what the agenda is. Whatever is going to help them fit into the environment the most, including having people at those spawn points, so that as they appear, I will be standing there, or the people I've trained will be standing there saying, hi, let's make sure you know how to move around, press your arrow key, or, turn your head, and make sure they know how to walk and talk. Because if they can do that, then they're on their way to having a great experience. All the other cool stuff like teleporting, they can discover later, but just get them basic walking and talking and have someone there to make sure that, that they get oriented. And then the other thing that I found, it can be so much like real life, that the people who are shy and what we call wallflowers, holding up the wall there, not talking to anybody in real life, the same thing's going to happen in virtual space. You will see them clustered up kind of on the edges of things. So I always try to design my experiences so it's going to bring people in. My favorite, easiest thing is just say, everybody find a buddy, make them form little pairs, walk their little selves around there, make sure they can all unmute, and then give them an icebreaker question, something really easy. Because even people who are shy, when you put them in something where there's an expectation that they're going to go and talk to someone, and it's just one person, then that's a little bit easier. And then maybe, you can branch out from there and do different types of icebreakers, but do something to really help these people come in and help them understand that it's okay to talk. So accessibility is an issue in all of the platforms that I've seen at this point. There's some great work that I've seen being done discussing accessibility within these virtual experiences, but I wouldn't say that we're there yet. And so realistically, if I'm going to do some kind of experience right now that would be required in some way, I'm not going to do it in VR, or I'm going to offer an alternative that I think is still a really good alternative. Because otherwise, it's kind of like holding an important meeting in a second floor, walk up, no elevator, and it's just not there yet. So we're working on it. Everyone's working on it. But if you have people who are significantly visual impaired, there are experiments that we've seen of people trying to create like a virtual white cane, so you can tap it and you can use the spatial audio echo effects to kind of help you navigate a room. I've seen various types of guide dog experiences. There are lots of things that people are looking at, or even just giving somebody a sighted guide as a buddy is something that we've definitely talked about. There's a group called the Blind Burners that did Burning Man in alt space, and so they would also use sighted guides sometimes to kind of help people around. But this is all stuff that needs to grow a bit. If you have people who have profound hearing loss, there are some platforms that can do transcription. AltSpace used to be able to do that of what you were saying, but you still need a way to kind of inject conversation to the other people in the conversation group you're in. So there's some work to be done around that. And then just in terms of movement, you want to make sure that your platform works for people who have different types of motor impairments, and maybe using sticky keys or blow tubes, or some of the accommodative technology that's out there. Now, sensory is an interesting one, because like you may have been to events in person where they have a quiet room now. That's becoming kind of a standard thing, because people with autism or ADHD, they may need some quiet space just to go get away from it all for a little bit. And You don't necessarily have to do that in a VR event because, of course, if someone is overwhelmed, they could just leave the VR platform and then come back in later. There's usually not a big barrier to that. But I have actually seen events that are creating quiet space as part of the event rooms. And I think it's a really lovely thing. It could be a meditation space where there's calming music. It could be something that is completely silent and everybody is forcibly muted when they're in that space, and let people have a place to go to recover while still staying in the rest of the immersive experience. And I put a link down there. This is presenting in Teams, so PowerPoint in Teams. So you should be able to just click that link. And that talks about accessible events in general. My wish is that, within the next year or so that we see accessible events also addressing how would you do immersive events in an accessible way. So another thing that's really important is how people are going to behave in the event. So, think about all of the different population that's coming. Make sure that you're including people right off the bat. Have them involved in the planning, and especially anyone who is underrepresented, because they're going to tell you, hey, this really isn't going to work for people with autism, or hey, this is going to make women feel really uncomfortable at your event. And absolutely have a code of conduct. I'm sure that Metaverse One has one. I'm pretty sure I saw that floating by there. But in a virtual event, I actually post that code of conduct just like I am required to do at a physical event that I run for Microsoft. So, print a little paper out there, make a little digital paper and stick it up right there. And I put it near that spawn point. So there is no question. These are the expected standards of behavior there. And also make it easy for people to know who to talk to. Different platforms have different ways of identifying the event runners. And so make sure people know who those people are, or have email or, text or, Slack or whatever, so that they can ping the organizers if something unfortunate happens, because, things can happen. Just like a Teams call, there's nothing to stop somebody from coming up, Teams bombing this and saying really inappropriate things. Same thing can happen in immersive experiences. There are various security types of things and account things that can be done. But even then, even at a corporate event, you would still expect people to be on their best behavior, and they aren't always. Especially with VR, people have hands and they can do really inappropriate things with the hands. Been there, seen that. So have a way to get those people out of the event if it's not appropriate. And you may need to also, within your organization, think about what your policy is. If someone behaves inappropriately, make sure that you have the kind of policies that you have in place for inappropriate behavior at physical events, and let that inform what you're going to do at these immersive events, because they're very lifelike. All right, how are we doing? Tips and tricks. So a couple of things here when I'm actually running events. So, there are various platforms out there. I probably should know the clients that people are using here, because when people come into the event and they're having problems, you need to know how to tell them what to fix. And so different VR experiences, mixed immersive experiences, have ways of telling what's going on. So this is a screenshot right from the video. So I'm not telling you anything out of school here. I'm just pointing out some things that you might not have noticed in the video. When Miriam comes in, she has this little headset indicator over here. So I can tell that Miriam is on a Quest device. And some platforms do this. It's very helpful, because then if Miriam is having problems and I'm trying to troubleshoot, I can say, Miriam, nod your head if you can hear me. And in the VR headset, she's going to nod her head, and I'm going to be able to see that, and I'm going to be able to know that at least her audio is working. If she doesn't nod her head, then I've got to find some other way to reach her, which can be more difficult in a headset. Whereas if somebody is in 2D, they don't have the little indicator there, I can just maybe send them a text or send them a message in Teams and say, hey, are you having problems? And know that it's likely that's going to pop up so they can see it. Also, people who are in headsets are going to have hands. They're going to be able to do gestures. People who are not in headset will usually have their hands at some kind of fixed position, unless there's a specific interaction that has been built within that platform. And so this is also directly from the blog here. Immersive spaces for teams can be accessed by PC and VR headsets. And so that is in our private preview right now. We're having people use both of those. And then you also want to be able to tell who is speaking. So every platform is also going to have some way of identifying the active speaker, because if they don't, they get all sorts of feedback saying, you got to be able to do this. And every platform is trying to make it easier and easier. In this particular one, if you watch the video, you'll see there's even a little extra audio cue that they overlaid in here. But really, it's looking for the name tag that's lit up. Oh, and you can see that Miriam here does not have the headset icon right now, so she's in 2D. But the reason you want to be able to know who is talking is a lot of times in different platforms, you'll get an echo effect. So I am speaking and I'm hearing my own voice delayed coming back at me. It's very disorienting. Generally, that happens because somebody is in the environment either without any kind of audio headphone isolation, or they have the audio, but the gain is turned up so high that what I'm saying is going in their microphone and then, coming back out at me as though that person is speaking. And so, if you're hearing the echo, look around for whose speaker indicator is lighting up, and then ask them to either put on audio headphones or, turn down their mic gain, or just stay muted unless they're going to talk. And that'll help cut down a lot of issues. Other things for audio. So I mentioned already, ask them to nod, which is very easy if they're in headset. If they're on PC, you might need to tell them how to nod. It may be easier to have them move first, and then you can say, okay, turn left or turn right, using their left and right arrow keys. So turn left if you can hear me, turn right if you can hear me. Also, if they have emojis, some platforms have emojis, very obvious, and you can say, send me a happy face if you can hear me. And try to establish some kind of communication there. Usually you're going to have to get them into settings. It's another thing where having pictures of the settings posted in the space can help, because you may not be able to describe how to get there, but you can walk them over to a picture and say, here, look at this, click this, go here. Okay, so I already mentioned the echoes there. If the audio is choppy, sometimes it's bandwidth. You're not going to be able to do anything about it. A lot of times just leaving the space and coming back in is helpful for that. Some spatial audio may require a wired headset. Some may not. It just kind of depends on the platform that you're in. But I found in general, having a headset tends to give a better immersive experience, even not like the Quest headset, but even just like an audio, headphones or earbuds can really help, and then can also help eliminate audio problems within the environment. I mentioned moderation. I mentioned I use 2D a lot. It's because if I'm going to run an event, it's a heck of a lot easier to do it in 2D, because I can have on my screens, we can have a back channel in Teams or Slack or Discord or whatever it is, so that we can all talk to each other while it's going on. When I've only done a few things in headset where I still needed to be kind of plugged into the event team that was going on. So what I would do is take just a Bluetooth earphone wired to my telephone, my cell phone, and have that in one ear, and then I would have my VR headset on the other ear, and then just have to be really careful about muting, never being unmuted in both places at the same time, which can get a little bit crazy, but that was what I had to kind of do for the effect there. If I can do it in 2D, I'd rather do it in 2D. And I tell you, as someone who has walked miles and miles of that Orange County conference facility in Orlando, being able to moderate events in 2D is so awesome. It's just like teleport or click, and I can like be in all the rooms all at once very quickly. So just a few things. I mentioned before, I think having, some kind of a way to provide help there. If you're using Teams Immersive Space, that's great, because you have Teams right there. You can troubleshoot there in Teams. But if you're going to do any kind of standalone experience, use whatever platform people are most familiar with. I actually like to start in there, have them install the app, have somebody waiting in the world, and have somebody waiting in the event, so that we can kind of ferry people back and forth. And if someone shows up in the event and they're stuck and they don't know what to do, send them back into the Teams or the Zoom call, whatever. So that becomes your help desk, and make sure they know how to find that help desk. One of the first big events I tried to run, I did not have this. I don't know how many people I lost because they just couldn't figure out how to get in. So at least by starting in the platform that everybody already knows, I know who's in there. And sometimes people still can't get in for various reasons. I ran a big event at Ignite in 2021, and a lot of people didn't have the supported client to get into Altspace, but at least I knew what was going on, and I could find that feedback.